All right, welcome everybody around the world. Welcome to all my subscribers. Sorry if you saw me adjust my hair there for my presentation. But anyways, I've got a great video here today. You won't see anything. Well, there might be, but I haven't found anything else like it with this compendium of sources and information. So in this video here, you're gonna get something unprecedented on YouTube. So a lot of people, I would say most people nowadays, are claiming that the 2026 or 2027, the big event, the big ET event, um, whatever it might be in particular, but that this big mysterious event that's going to happen, which may be aliens, it may be big space rocks, something extraterrestrial, right? But most people say that the story of this big event, um, that this claim originated with more meager sources in the last few years. Some people say with Ramirez, that would stretch it back to whenever it was he gave those first talks, which I think was like in the 2000s or something. But in reality, there's actually sources, very good ones, that go back, excuse me, that go back even further, right? So all in all, there is a span, believe it or not, of uh, almost 40 years, spanning from about 1988, 1989, all the way up until current. Okay, so 25 plus 11, possibly 12. You're talking about 36, maybe 37 years, right? That's a very long time. Whereas you get some people claiming that Corbell originated it, in the last 5 years or so. Like I said, some people say Ramirez in like the 2000s or whatever. But no. It goes back much further than that. And I've compiled all the sources that I could find in my deep research on this. And I've actually got 16 sources. 16, 1 6. Okay, that's the most that anybody else out there can bring to the plate and has brought to the plate. I don't know why, because it wasn't impossible for anybody else to do the same research that I did. But nonetheless, I've persevered and I've dug and I've scraped and I've found these things. Um, so let's get right to it. And after I go through the list, what I'm going to do is, cover the likely scenarios of what we might encounter. So, if I'm not mistaken, I did include that at the bottom of this document that I prepared. So, let me just make sure. Yeah. So, I'll cover that as well. So, what are the likely scenarios that might be coming if it is extraterrestrials? Okay. So, here are the sources of evidence, all the sources that spoke about this big event. Okay, and I ranked them in order of when they occurred in history. Okay, so it's pretty much accurately chronological, right? uh, some of the later entries, more recent ones, might be a little, swap some around maybe, but who really cares, right? So they're in pretty much chronological order the way through. And I've also given them a somewhat arbitrary, but not really arbitrary, but an arbitrary ranking uh, based on credibility for the source. Okay, just a very simple, basic, arbitrary ranking system, right? Just to get a rough idea. So I would give a 0 if it can't really be substantiated, proven to be credible to any degree. Not to say that it's false, it might be right, but we can't actually substantiate it, right? So that would get a 0. And I thought about giving it halves because one or two of them deserved a half and not a 0. But like I said, it's just a simple, basic ranking that I'm doing. But it'll give you a better feel for how credible are all the 16 sources overall, right? That's the point. So 0 would mean there's nothing really to substantiate it, to actually prove that it's valid and credible, or credible. And then 1 would be credible, right? So it's got some credibility to it. But 2 would be it's very credible. Okay, so very basic system, but I've ranked each one of the 16 with that, right? How credible do I feel its source is? And then at the end, I've added up the score and we'll see what it is. So it'll be out of a total possible 32. Okay. Now, here we go. So starting off, and a lot of people, which has surprised me, don't know about this gentleman and they don't know about his story. But he was the one to start all of this off. So, like, where most people are claiming that, the 2026-27 event originated with Corbell or even Ramirez, I'm just surprised that so many people don't know about the older sources, right? So, the oldest one is a gentleman from Puerto Rico. I don't know how to pronounce it properly, even if I tried. But his name was Amari Rivera. Okay. And in 1988 or 1989, he was abducted or visited by extraterrestrials. He appears to be a very sincere person with his account. Um, Nonetheless, right, the general gist of it is that in 1988 or 9, he was abducted or visited by aliens and was told by them that in the year 2026 or 2027, I can't remember which one it was. It's hard to locate the clips now. But he was told by them that in 2026 or 2027, there would be a big meteor, he says asteroid, that would hit Earth around the region of the Caribbean and in Puerto Rico. And it would be devastating, and that good aliens, like fleets or legions of good aliens, would arrive to save humans from the Earth. Okay, this is the general gist of what his story was. Now, his account is not widely circulated online, which I find surprising, but it's still a known and famous case in UFOlogy. However, in the course of this past year, when I've tried to find this clip to show other people, I've found that it seems like it's being scrubbed. Not necessarily all the clips of his testimony, because I haven't been tracking that over the years. All I know is that there's not many of them out there now, right? And if the few that are out there disappeared, then we wouldn't have anything, right? But it's still a famous case. It's known. It's famous case in UFOlogy. He's not a nobody that nobody's ever heard of, right? That's not the case at all. But I so far, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that there's still ones out there. But as of current, I cannot find a clip from any of his interviews where he discusses the year. But I've seen it before, and it's documented online in accounts of his story and in other publications and such, right? So he has said it was whatever year it was, 26 or 27, one of the two, right? But for some reason, I can't find any clips of that year. Now, it could be that maybe this is true. Some big event like this is going to happen, and to reduce public panic or fear, they started scrubbing certain stuff. Okay, at least we have a plausible reason, right? That's the general gist of his account. I have a little synopsis here that I'll read as well. Mari Rivera, an alleged abductee from Puerto Rico, has provided specific details regarding an asteroid impact and the intervention of benevolent extraterrestrials. His account centers around a series of events that he claims were communicated to him by these good aliens. Rivera states that he was informed of an asteroid which would impact Earth in 2027, specifically around August 16th. He further, and there's a source for that. He further elaborated that this asteroid, which he sometimes refers to as a comet, would cause significant devastation, leading to a global catastrophe. There's a source for that. The extraterrestrials, described as tall, fair-skinned beings with large eyes, allegedly showed him visions of this future event, including tsunamis and widespread destruction. Also a source for that. Rivera's narrative includes the assertion that these good aliens would arrive to assist humanity during this crisis. He claims they would offer refuge and guidance to those who are chosen or prepared. Source for that. While the exact number of ships or the precise timing of their full intervention beyond the asteroid impact date is not consistently detailed, the core message is one of extraterrestrial assistance during a cataclysmic event. Source for that. He has also mentioned that these beings have been observing humanity for a long time and are concerned about the planet's well-being. Source for that. Rivera's experiences, which began with an alleged abduction in 1988, have been documented in various UFO and paranormal research circles, with his detailed predictions about the 2027 event being a central focus. Source for that. So he is, like I claimed, he's known and he is a famous account in UFOlogy, but for whatever reason, there's just not a lot of material about it. Maybe the material is being scrubbed as well, right? Um, but nonetheless, enough people have seen his stories. It can't get scrubbed 100%. That would look too suspicious, right? But anyways, that's the first one. That's the oldest source for the 2026 2027 big ET event. And his account unifies space rock plus space beings. Because the great question is it just the space rock that's coming? Is it just extraterrestrials that are coming in this big event? Is it both? One or the other? Well, the very first source, the starting source, the cornerstone for this whole concept of the 2026 or 7 big event, Amari Rivera was the source, the cornerstone, and he says it's both at once space rocks and extraterrestrials arriving together, teach their own reasons. Okay, that's number one. And for the rest of these, I don't have a big thing to read like that there. They'll be pretty quick to get through. Okay, now, his account I rank as number 2 for highly credible, right? Now, let's get on to number 2 out of the 16 sources. So the second source, going again in chronological order, there was an old clip from the 1990s, and I've seen this clip myself many times. I thought I had bookmarked it. I may have accidentally deleted the bookmark. But nonetheless, I cannot locate that clip anymore. I'd seen it in the last few years. I'd seen it before. But this clip it came out in the era, had the same look as those alien interview clips where they had the people with their faces and voices disguised. Everybody's familiar with these. I think they even came out on a DVD set called like Commander X or something like that. I think this is tied to the Victor, alien interview thing as well. But nonetheless, there were old clips back in the 90s with the 90s looking camera quality. And the people had their voices and faces obscured. They're being interviewed about things. And in those clips, maybe there was just one, maybe there was a bunch of interviews like that. They had the famous alien interview where you see the extraterrestrial who's actually suffering at the time in like a medical setup being observed. A lot of people have seen that clip. It's like one of the only footages of an extraterrestrial that we actually have, right? So, but in a 90s clip just like that, and it could have been from the overall length of footage in massive interviews at that time for that project, whoever was doing it. But there was a gentleman with the same type of setup, obscured face, obscured voice. And what he said is that, and he was of military related background. He was either in the military or, like working at the base for like another company or vendor or something like that. Right? He had some connection to the military. And he said that he was told that we have until 2025. I'm not quoting him verbatim, but what he said was that he said that humanity has until 2025. Sorry, the government, we have until 2025 to reveal UFO technology to the public, or it would be revealed by itself, implying, without saying it, aliens are going to show up and we will see the UFO technology, right? So if the government doesn't disclose it, they have until 2025. And if they don't disclose it by 2025, it will be disclosed under other, own measures, right? So, and the fact that I cannot find this clip anymore is worrying because that one's been scrubbed. The clip that I saw not that long ago in the last few years, I cannot locate anymore. No matter how much I search, even looking on Reddit and places like that, it's like it doesn't exist anywhere. And people aren't even talking about it. Very, very concerning. But nonetheless, there's a similar clip from the same era in the 90s. And this one's a little more well known and documented. Now, Jim Goodall, aviation journalist, said that 2 militaries from Area 51 told him that UFOs exist, but they will not be able to tell him more until 2025. And there are still clips available that you can find, a few of them, copies, for example, on YouTube. Okay, so that one there, I've scored as a 2 for credibility. And the prior one, sorry, the other 90s clip, I would score as a 2 as well. So these first three, the oldest sources, right, from the late 80s and in the 90s, I've given a score of 2, very credible to each of these three initial sources. Okay, and then later on in the 90s or possibly the 2000s, but I have a feeling it was probably the 90s. But allegedly, there was a letter that was sent to Art Bell and Linda Moulton Howe, accompanied with the metamaterial stating that 2025 will be changed for humankind. Full contact will be established around those years. This letter, it says, was sent a long time ago, right? So I'm thinking long time ago is like the 90s or maybe early 2000s, but probably the 90s. Maybe it was early, maybe it was the 80s, I don't know, right? But this is 2025. It's not 26 or 27, right? Like Amari Rivera said, but this is 2025, which is similar to the prior two sources, right? Um, from that military perspective, saying 2025. Now, I've scored this as a 1, meaning it has some credibility, right? I can't say it's very credible because this is far more obscure as a source, right? This is just a letter sent to Art Bell and Linda Moulton Howe. We have no clue the credibility of the letter itself and so forth, right? So I score this as a 1. But this is definitely worth mentioning because, again, this is mentioning the same period of years 2025, 2026, 2027. Okay. Now, the next source, um, this is again from the 90s, and this is to do with the Victor Alien Tapes interview. Okay, now there's a comment on Reddit which I think just sums it up quite neatly in a few sentences, so I thought I would read that. Then I've got a short synopsis. But the comment on Reddit said, dug into the guy with the cover name Victor, who was on Coast to Coast about Area 51 and apparently had a hand in that alien interview video, which was supposedly snuck away from the government during a transfer from analog to digital archives. In Victor's final interview, which, would have been available, probably still available to watch, he claims he is dying and the rest of the world was going to soon experience something akin to the biblical end times. The year 2027 was brought up in the discussion around that claim as well. Now, that's pretty powerful stuff. Not only are they throwing in biblical end times lens now, which is what I believe in this overall thing, but the same year, 2027. Now, here's the short synopsis. Victor, who leaked the alien interview in 1997, said on 2008 on his last testament that there will be no 20th anniversary of this documentary, which would be 2028. Meaning that 2027 will be the final anniversary. That the NHI tested us and we failed, and they will start a massive event on Earth because the legacy programs held the NHI captives and allowed them to die. He said that the 2012 date was wrong, and he seemed to indicate towards also a solar event. He said that the aliens discorporated at a certain date, echoing the Bob Lazar talk about work with the government, but a battle followed and they stopped cooperation. He also said that Dick Cheney was aware of the programs and that well, anyways, I'm not going to get into all that stuff, right? Naming names and all that. But when they finally understood what the aliens were saying in the telepathic interviews, he became interested only in saving his soul. But nonetheless, right? So that's what this source alleges there, right? So that's a synopsis on the Victor scenario, right? So this overall source I'll give credibility of 2 because this could be found in clips, in tapes, going back starting with the 90s when these things were being discussed. In his final interview, I don't know what year that was in particular. I think it said there 2008. That takes it out of the 90s. But if it is genuinely the same gentleman, then this will make it, still credible at level 2, right? But nonetheless, this is, I think, deserves more than a 1. I think it deserves a 2 for credibility. But going on, the next one I rank as credibility of 1. So in the same time period, 90s to 2000s, we had Phil Schneider, who everybody is familiar with, structural engineer. He said that he was at Dulce Base in 1979 during the U.S. fight with aliens, and that the aliens will reduce 7/8 of the human population by 2029. Soon after this talk, he was found passed away. That's just a short synopsis on that source there, right? So everybody's familiar with Phil Schneider. I don't need to introduce this. I used to really believe Phil Schneider when I was younger, doing much more thorough research over my 20 years now, having grown up and spent 20 years now researching UFOlogy. It's probably 22 years now. But nonetheless, I've learned that there is some evidence that we should possibly be skeptical of Phil Schneider, to put it, nicely, but accurately. So I can't give him a 2 for credibility, right? Um, but nonetheless, right, still worth mentioning. Um, Now the next source, this source is from the 2000s, possibly the 2010s, and this is the ex-agent Ramirez. A lot of people are familiar with him. A lot of people, like I said earlier, claim that he originated this whole story, but no, like I just showed, this stems back decades prior. But Ramirez famously said that in either 2025, 26, or 27, one of those years, that something will happen, things will change, ETs will disclose presence somehow, right? And a little synopsis: John Ramirez of the said that he was officially briefed that the word got out within the government that contact will happen on 2027, and that the alphabet uh, department was mad at him for leaking mad at him for leaking that the government is aware about the date. So anyways, I give that source a credibility level of 2 as well, right? I'll give him credit for that. If I had a more intricate scale, I wouldn't give it full blown. If it was out of 5, I wouldn't give it a 5. But for a 0, 1, or a 2, I'll give it a 2. So next we get into the more recent era, right? So this is the 2020s. So for this next source, I used to give it a credibility ranking of 1. And that means that there is some credibility to it, but we can't say it's very credible. And this was Louis Elizondo. So, and it's nothing against him. I have nothing against Lou Elizondo. I like him and appreciate his efforts and everything, right? But it's just that, he's not coming from, it's what he relays about this doesn't make it a credibility level of 2. And he's not coming from the platform or, position where he was. I don't know. It's not worth spending the time trying to put it into words, right? I give it a 1 and not a 2, but it's nothing against Lou Elizondo. It's just what it is, right? But Lou Elizondo alluded to this time period when he said something to the extent of, if you're tired of this subject, find a hobby for a few years, and by 2027, everything will be out in the open. On Reddit, for example, allegedly it says Lou was told and must have mentioned somewhere or from someone who knows. On Reddit, I found something which shows allegedly Lou was told and must have mentioned somewhere or from someone who knows that he said allegedly, and not necessarily quoting, but that we found aliens about 4.8 light years away on a planet with lights and everything. That's supposed to be the big reveal. So the crazy huge super reveal is that there's a giant mega alien spacecraft headed towards Earth from that planet. This is what Lou was told about. So that's what I found on Reddit, right? And like I tried to word, it sounded complicated, but what this on Reddit says is allegedly Lou is told and must have mentioned somewhere the following, or the following was said from someone who knows, right? That we found aliens about 4.8 light years away on a planet with lights and everything. That's supposed to be the big reveal. And I don't know if that's supposed to be the end of the implied quote, but then it says in the post, the crazy huge super reveal is that there's a giant mega alien spacecraft headed towards Earth from that planet. This is what Lou was told about. Now, I know in UFOlogy, there has been word in the grapevine for a very long time that there would be a big arrival at some point, right? Now, the 2027 date only floats around and originates from the sources I'm covering here, unless there's one I've forgotten or overlooked or not stumbled upon. This is the most comprehensive list of all the sources anyways that's out there, right? But there's always been word in the grapevine that there would be some big ship coming here, that there is a big ship making its way here. There's always been word in the grapevine like that. But trying to pin down an actual source, like an identifiable source, you can't really do that for that. So it's more just like a rumor that's been whispered around from the grapevine. You can't really put a name and a source to that, unfortunately, right? But apparently, based on what Lou has said and alleged to, that he's saying that by 2027 everything will be out in the open. And what this person alleges is that Lou was told, he must have said something somewhere for this person to say this, or somebody who knows the situation said this about what I just said about the big spacecraft coming, right? So if that's true, then Lou would have been aware of, the extraterrestrials that are headed towards Earth, right? But overall, I give this a 1, but it's still definitely worth. Excuse me. It's still definitely worth being up on the list there. Still definitely worth mentioning. It's still very important to mention. Next, in similar fashion, we have another that I ranked as 1, another source. This was, this one particular resource said that he claimed this in 2025, whereas I thought Corbell said this a few years prior, but whatever. In 2025, apparently, Corbell said, quote, they're going to say something like a big UAP is headed to Earth, but it will be a big deception. This is a famous statement that he's made, right? Now, I watched him say that. Everybody watched him say that. Now, apparently, this outlook that he has, this belief of his, his discernment in this, what's that word? Like, his conviction in this is, and his stance is allegedly based on a document from the 1970s that he's been made aware of or is aware of, that describes a plan to do this. Now, I don't really get with all that stuff, but nonetheless, right? He did say that, right? And he said it with like certainty when he said that. So apparently he said in January 2025, quote, "You're going to be told there is a craft on its way to Earth. That is 100 bleeping percent is the lie you're going to be told." One sec, I have to take a phone call real quick. Hello? I can order something. What do you want? Yeah, I'll get a pizza. All right. All right. I'm about to finish the video I'm doing, so I'll just wrap it up and then place the order. All right. Okay. All right. See ya. Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. But nonetheless, so that was Jeremy Corbell. Now, here we get into ones that are, again, in the last few years. None of these are too significant. These next few, but I remember reading a source somewhere that says it was from either the Schellinger or the Schrodinger report. It might be one of the two. I can't remember which one it is. I always get it mixed up. But there's a big mass of hundreds and hundreds, maybe like 600 pages of UFO like text information, like material sent over to government. I think as part of the disclosure hearings over the last few years, and like just a lot of material all put in there. And then not to say that all of it's like 100% like, oh, this is evidence of aliens, but just a lot of information and material that was compiled and submitted to their, that as to act as, like an overall pile of evidence, right? And allegedly, and like I said, some of the stuff in there might not, necessarily be true or accurate stuff. It's just information that's put into there, right? So there was something, and I remember seeing this, like I remember seeing it and reading this. So it's not a fake memory, but somewhere somebody said that this was an excerpt from the Schellinger Schrodinger report. This is part of the document mass that was sent to government, and it gave this little story and narrative that was allegedly a communication from whatever certain extraterrestrials about meteors hitting the Earth and blah blah blah. Okay, now it also turns out that that same story and narrative can be found on the Forgotten Languages website. Now, the Forgotten Languages website may or may not be anything credible whatsoever. It could be like a LARP, or it could be something more serious to be taken more seriously. I don't really know. I lean towards it's probably LARPing, right? So I give this a zero scale because I don't think there's anything credible about it. So even if it's not in the massive documents that was sent as part of this disclosure evidence, right, in the Schellinger or Schrodinger report, whatever it is, even if it wasn't in there and if it was just from the Forgotten Languages website, or maybe what was on the Forgotten Languages website was submitted as part of that report, part of the evidence pile. Whatever it is, I don't really care because at the end of the day, there's no real credibility to this, anyways, but it's worth mentioning, right? Um, I have a longer excerpt of this, but it's not worth reading at all because, like I said, there's no real credibility to it. I don't really even believe the extraterrestrials said these things, but it claims to be a communication from extraterrestrials who say that in the year 26 or 27, there will be a big event or cataclysm from meteors hitting the Earth, cycles of meteors. But anyways, right? So, but I give that zero in terms of credibility, but it's still worth mentioning. Now, the next one, again, I give this a zero for credibility, but it's still worth mentioning. There was a clip that is now long forgotten. But in the last few years, wasn't that long ago? It had to be like 2022, 23, something like that. It couldn't have been much older than that. Military guy in like a military Jeep with, like military stuff in the background. And he looked very, like panicked or, like worried about something, like he was scared to be talking about this on camera. And he was doing like a little FaceTime thing with his phone and talking about how there's going to be like, I can't remember exactly, but basically a big event, like aliens coming here, or he said a big event's going to happen, something big's going to happen. And the year he gave was like 25, 26, or 27. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but at the time when this clip came out, everybody was hooting and hollering about it because the guy would be like an excellent actor if it was fake. But nonetheless, I think it's just worth mentioning because you never know. I mean, if all this is real and certain people know this and it is coming, whatever it is, the big event, he might have known about it as well. Maybe overheard, maybe he's been told, and he was just so nervous about it, he wanted to share it with the world. Who knows? It's worth mentioning, right? It's also interesting that a lot of people have forgotten this clip, and I guarantee you wouldn't be able to find it now. It would be too obscure and difficult to find. But anyways, moving on, I give the next one a zero credibility rating as well. And this is Mr. Bledsoe. No disrespect to him, but I usually do not believe when people claim they're, it depends. Amari Rivera, yes. Mr. Bledsoe, when you start having like repeated alien visitations and becoming like a very casual know-it-all about stuff, I tend not to believe people like that. But you never know. Maybe there is some truth to what Mr. Bledsoe is saying. I don't know. I'm not going to waste my time worrying about it. I give it a zero credibility rating, but it's worth mentioning that Mr. Bledsoe said that in 2026 or 2027 is when aliens are going to show themselves to Earth in some way. Okay. Now, the following I actually give a 1 for credibility. It's definitely got a lot more credibility than Mr. Bledsoe and the other things I just mentioned. But Jason Sands said something which I've heard from other sources as well. But just for the sake of brevity, he's the most recent, easy to recall source that says the narrative that 80 years from Roswell, time to return the craft and beings, or they will return for them, which would be 2027. So apparently Jason Sands said that he was working in intel and monitoring phone calls out from Nellis. Some guy at the base got some new information, maybe from an NHI, and then called some other official and told them that they need to return the ships and prisoners or the NHI will be back to get them, right? A lot of people know this story. I give that a credibility of 1. The next one I give a credibility of 0, but it's worth mentioning. It could be true, but I just give it a 0 for now. It's not worth me scrounging around trying to find out how valid it is because we have enough evidence outside of this. But Kelly Chase, who I'm not familiar with, said that podcasters and YouTubers started receiving info from Intel guys saying that on 2027 there would be disclosure about a spaceship heading towards Earth at half the speed of light. And apparently she saw screens of the conversations, right? And then on September in 2024, apparently Psychoactivo podcast, who I actually watch, seems like a new and a small type guy, new to the scene. I could be wrong. That's the impression I always got from him. Really nice guy. I'm a subscriber of his. I enjoy watching him and all that. But supposedly he's mentioned here. So his podcast received the same intel from his contacts that James Webb saw the ship coming and that Congress was briefed about it. I remember hearing buzz about this too, that James Webb spotted a spaceship coming, but that's just part of this, the whispers in the grapevine that I mentioned before. That type of story's been around for a long time. That's nothing new. That was before the James Webb Telescope, if I'm not mistaken. So the following one, this one I give the highest credibility level. I cannot say the individual's name, but he's one of the top individuals, so to speak, key figures in UFOlogy. But I got to speak with other people, speak with this individual, and I cannot disclose who they were, but they said that, and this was recently, they said that, and I'm not quoting, but it's close enough, that everyone essentially, I can't remember the words that were used, but everyone higher up in government and the military or whatever, they know that something is coming, a big event is coming. And that's why they've been building a weapon to try and shoot it down. So this is mind blowing, right? So a big event is coming, right? Whichever specific year, they're probably not even sure. I don't know. But, it's again, it's 25, 26, or 27. It's like in this little span of years. Big event is coming, and they built a weapon to try and shoot it down with. That's just mind blowing. Right? And I'll let you digest that on your own time. The next one is that I have to mention, which I would give a credibility level of 2, is the biblical prophecies that point to this very span of years as being when the celestial messengers from outer space, the heavens, arrive here, the armies of God, to rescue the good from the earth, when all the space rocks start hitting the planet. Right? So the Bible has said the very same thing that Amari Rivera was talking about, and that these other sources seem to be all pointing towards as well, right? So I think that's worth mentioning. I cover the evidence for that in my book that's available on Amazon, Manday's Evidence book. I haven't put out the updated version of it, but it doesn't matter. If you have wisdom, you can still read it. It's still a priceless trove of information and discoveries. But the last 2 things I want to mention real quick is that this is important to mention, that there's undeniably been a huge increase in mysterious extraterrestrial activity, UFO activity, including the worldwide mystery UAPs, drones in late 2024 and early 2025. So in the last few years, in particular, there's been a huge increase, and countless people have seen them. So I gotta go.